The Deep Space Nine project was the Federation's last best hope for peace. It failed. But in the year of the Dominion War it became something greater, the Federation's last best hope for victory. The Dominion War threatened to be a rather short one and not resolved in the Federation's favour. The taking of Deep Space Nine by Dominion and Cardigan forces at the end of Season 5 meant the minefield preventing overwhelming reinforcements from ruffle-stomping the entire Alpha Quadrant would only last so long. Benny Sisko, getting his celestial mates involved near the start of this season, solved that issue by creating what amounted to a new minefield inside the wormhole. It changed an imminent loss into a more even footing, albeit one where the Dominion buggered off back to Cardigan territory to ramp up production and slowly creep back ahead. All of which put Deep Space Nine, now back under Starfleet administration, very much on the front line due to their proximity. Indeed, it was from here that the Federation and its allies launched their first attempt at taking Cardigan space. Okay, that's largely because we roped the Romulans into it with a bit of deception and murder, but we subcontracted the really bad stuff to another species, so that makes it fine. Regardless, the season ends with the war's even footing slowly beginning to swing in our favour. The season also ends with the wild card of the wormhole getting fully closed down by Seagull Dukat. That doesn't affect the war per se, as it was already blocked to reinforcements, but it does remove the Federation's principal player in the counter-offensive. Sisko is Starfleet's lead Dominion guy, both diplomatically and militarily, so benching him is a significant blow. Sisko's not the only one who's had stuff happen to him though, so let's go through our cast and see how the year has treated them. Sisko's been a busy boy this year, made an adjutant to an admiral, placed in charge of retaking DS9, then lumbered with the needs of a whole fleet as soon as he got his old office back. Okay, he managed to foist the actual command onto someone else, but it's still DS9 that has to keep them all running. And that's just one of his jobs. The other, being emissary to the prophets, had him spend a whole episode in 1950s New York as a science fiction writer, and another trying to trigger a mini Bajoran Armageddon with his own son as the vessel of the anti-prophets. Despite all this effort, the prophets got blindsided by Seagull Dukat after he gained a hate boner for Bajorans and Sisko personally. Given that it was Sisko who talked him into accepting that he hates Bajor, he's not entirely blameless. Oh, and there was that time when he became an accessory to multiple murders and covered it up to make a species join in a war. That was probably a bit of a bugger too. All of which is enough to make even the most committed Starfleet officer decide they've had enough of the lot and spend their days washing clams instead. Another year, another change of partner for Kira. That's the line I used right at the start of Kira's segment for Season 5's summary, and would you look at that, it's accurate again. You could argue it's doubly so. Before she and Odo worked their shit out and got together, she had a little dalliance with the evil universe version of Bareil. Our version of him became a very ex-boyfriend when he did a dead back in Season 3, shortly after being turned into Robo-Monk. She might have sampled the forbidden fruit of evil Bareil, but that was a one-off, meaning she was free to respond to the wooing of Odo after lounge singer and sentient hologram Victor Cheesefountain set them both up. Once they got over the initial awkwardness, it was relatively plain sailing. Other events include orb vision time travel to watch her mum shacking up with Cardigan Hitler, being possessed by a god, and taking over command of the entire station. This is what you get for hanging around with Starfleet. Dax has had what could best be described as a very mixed year. On the one hand, she got married to the man she loved. On the other, she's dead. Even the most optimistic person would call that a significant tonal shift. The Dax we've known for 6 years now is officially in a repurposed torpedo casing, and no amount of Genesis devices will bring her back. It was very much a year of extremes when you look back on it, threatening to kill Sorella, wife of Martok, then humbling herself and being welcomed into their family, planning a decadent honeymoon before nearly carking it on an away mission. Given all the flip-flopping around, talk of starting a family was all but guaranteed to result in her being demoted to corpse. This is the future, though, and Dex is an alien, so there's a big difference between being dead and being gone. A pretty quiet year for Bashir this time round. That's a relative term in Starfleet, though, so we still had him dealing with the spicy brain squad and being accused of treason. Revealing Bashir to be a DNA-fiddled human last season raises an obvious question. Where are the others? The answer, at least for the ones who got treated by Star Trek's version of Harold Shipman, is locked up in a medical facility. That's until Bashir offered to take a pop at them anyway, with the result being them attempting to give Starfleet military secrets to the Dominion. Hardly surprising, then, that Bashir came under a little scrutiny afterwards. He acquitted himself admirably enough to be invited to join Section 31, our first mention of the independent Starfleet division, which does all of our really dodgy shit when we can't farm it out to someone else. He may have only had a couple of dedicated Bashir episodes this season, but we'll be seeing more of both of them before we're done. You know, I sometimes wonder what's in the fine print of the contract when you sign up to Starfleet. One day you're fixing a replicator to stop it making chicken soup that tastes of licorice. The next, you're a spy infiltrating the space mafia. I'm all for a flexible workplace, but expecting the barber on the Enterprise D to kidnap Gowron is a bit much. It's a twist on the O'Brien must suffer rule, of course, this time aimed at his guilt. He has to live with knowing a guy's dead as a direct result of his actions, and one that trusted him to boot. Indirect suffering is somewhat of a theme this season, what with his daughter falling victim to a time fuckery and spending 10 years alone. The big red reset button might have got slapped at the end, but I doubt that's of much consolation to the guy who got stabbed by her. Being a changeling isn't really all it's cracked up to be. Sure, you get the shape-shifting stuff, but it's not really worth it when it comes with potential brainwashing. Odo spends years trying to make things fair for those around him, and what happens when he has a handful of goopy fun times with one of his own? He starts to believe that, actually, now he thinks about it, the Solids really are all clueless peons who need to be ruled with an iron fist for their own good. And to think the internet always told me it was not getting sex that turned you into a fascist. It's Kira that stops him in the end, or more accurately, the threat to her if he doesn't stop himself. It takes him a while to make it up to her, some of it spent in a wardrobe, but trust is re-established eventually, and with the help of a holographic Cupid, his unrequited love manages to lose the prefix. He didn't even need to delete a few thousand people to do it, so that's progress, I guess. Shenanigans. If there's a single word to describe Quark's year, it's shenanigans. He's gathered a group of misfits, mercenaries, and family members to help save his mum from the Dominion. He's been led a merry chase to claim a will, all while others play him against each other, including the person who was supposed to be dead. And he's dipped into feminism by gender-swapping for the lols in this season's notable low point, Profit and Lace, an episode so utterly missing the mark that it would be funny if it wasn't already trying to be. There's probably a moral to be learned here about not involving others in your own schemes if you don't want to receive the same treatment in return. Not that Quark will learn it, of course. He came out of all 3 shenanigans episodes with more money or property than he had when they started, so he'll probably see it as a validation of his life choices. More of the same with Jake this season as he's been pursuing his writing career. The start of the season had him trying to report on DS9's Dominion presence, not that 5th Uncle Wayun the Creepy let those stories be sent. The journalism angle popped up a couple of other times too, with one of them showing he was fine with lying to his best mate in order to chase a story. The universe might have taught him a lesson on that one, what with the adventure nearly ending in him getting kaboomed. Or maybe the universe was just being a dick to him anyway, as he was also possessed by a par-wraith for a bit of a Barney between gods. Life in a Starfleet family may have its problems, but it's certainly a good source of newsworthy experiences. Well, it was never going to last, was it? Worf being happy just didn't sit right, so the upbeat end of Season 5 was only ever going to be a temporary thing. Still, he did get a year of things not being bloody awful before it all went to shit again, an unexpected reconciliation with his son Alexander, a marriage to Dax, even a slight removal of that stick up his arse. I mean, okay, him failing a mission to save Dax's life means his entire Starfleet career is basically stalled, but at least he had the chance to realize there's something more important to him than duty. There was something more important anyway, as his former wife is now in a box. The universe has taken a big old shit on Worf's life once more, and balance has been restored. Our resident grumpy bastard has an excellent reason to go back to grumping again. It goes without saying that the largest impact of this season is the death of Jadzia Dax, so I suppose we should probably talk about the Terry Farrell business. We'll let Farrell herself describe the situation as she spoke about it in the 2016 book, The 50-Year Mission, The Next 25 Years. I should probably clarify that I don't actually have a copy of the book myself, at least not yet, so we're going from excerpts and summaries published on Memory Alpha. According to Farrell, she wanted a contract for Season 7 that included fewer appearances, and that's something Rick Berman simply wouldn't accept. From her version of events, he was a complete and utter cock about trying to force the matter too, with tactics ranging from getting others to state she'd have no career if she left, to Berman summoning her just before filming a scene. Why did she want to cut down? Well, we know she went on to the sitcom Becca afterwards, and actors wanting to know what comes next when facing the end of a long-running gig is reasonable. But there are also comments from Farrell that she was sick of Rick Berman's misogynistic bullshit. So the TLDR of the whole thing from Farrell herself can be summed up with the word Berman, or, to give him his full name, Rick fucking Berman. His critics are many, his defenders few, and those in the latter camp are also sometimes members of the former too. Even those defending him stick to commenting on his attitude to the franchise rather than his personal or professional behavior. I don't like to comment on situations without hearing from both sides, but, well, if a sizable portion of the people who work with you on the reg develop the opinion that you're a massive arsehole, I'd consider that to be statistically relevant. Anywho, we'll never know what a Season 7 with Jadzia Dax would have been like. Just as with the introduction of Worf at the start of Season 4, a change of cast has the potential to impact things far beyond themselves. But we're not here to talk about Season 7, are we? This is about Season 6, and the run has perhaps the most variable output to date. In the Pale Moonlight is regularly cited as a fan favourite, not just for Deep Space Nine, but Trek as a whole. Prophet and Lace sits in a similar position, only at the polar opposite end of that scale. It's notable in another way too. Season 6 features a 6-episode storyline arc for the retaking of Deep Space Nine, which is as close to being serialized as it had ever come. Whether the effort expended on that contributed to things being somewhat less stable afterwards is unknown, but there are at least 2 episodes to our knowledge based on pitches that had been rejected multiple times previously. One Little Ship and Time's Orphan were both ideas that had been turned down repeatedly. How regular of an occurrence that was is unknown, but going to the literal bottom of the barrel a few times would certainly explain the season's reputation of highs and lows. Stepping back to look at the events of the season in general, we've dealt with the imminent threat of the Dominion War and turned it back down to a simmer. We're still in open hostilities, but we're not actively getting our asses handed to us anymore. Perhaps the greater focus for this season, though, was on Bajor and the Prophets. We've now established the Par-Wraith business wasn't simply a one-off when Keiko got possessed, which I suppose means there's technically a second war kicking off. That could have been averted if Kai Sin, the Delphic douchebag, had let a preordained confrontation take its course, but she buggered up the whole thing by interfering. It's left to the viewer to decide if that was a lack of faith or a desire to avoid a future where she's out of a job. Regardless of the reason, it's the direct cause of Seagull Dukat being able to take on a Par-Wraith hitchhiker and completely stuff the Wormhole, the Prophets, the Bajorans, Dax, and Sisko. Say what you like about his ethics, but you've got to admire Seagull Dukat's efficiency. Season 7 then opens on a raft of changes, not only for the status quo on a number of elements that have been here since the start, but also for the cast of characters itself. After all, a dead Trill host isn't so much the end of the game as merely waiting for the respawn timer. If you've been enjoying our continued rants and waffling on the topic of old science fiction, there are some names on the screen right now who deserve your thanks. These generous patrons of the channel are a large portion of the reason why we still keep this up. And on that topic, it's time to decide where we're going once our tenure on DS9 is over. If you're a supporter on Patreon, there should be a poll active right now to decide which of the old treks we'll be covering next. The poll will run for 28 days, assuming Patreon hasn't been cocking around with its systems again, so get over there before the 25th of November and make your voice heard. As before, I'll be abstaining from the vote, not least of which so I can't be blamed if it's something you didn't want. If you're not a patron and you'd like to join them, you can do so for as little as $1 a month. I don't generally enjoy asking for money, which is why I limit it to these summaries once every 3 months or so, but I do need to eat if I'm going to continue writing and recording. Whether your support is financial or moral, thank you for choosing to hang around. This is still the most satisfying job-adjacent thing I've ever done, and you lot are a pretty big part of the reason why. Thank you. End of summary.